Welcome to today's lecture on production lifecycle. This lecture is designed for the Game Simulation and Animation Design course at Lake Minneola High School. Our essential question for today is, how do video games get produced from conceptual ideas to being sold on the retail market? And first we must look at the concept to production model. There are three stages in the development process. First you have the concept stage, and then you have construction stage, and finally the tuning stage. It is important to note that all game developments must adhere to a budget, and this is included with the game proposal. So looking at the budget, the total money allotted for the game development based on the estimated development time, or EDT. The budget must cover expenses that include team member salaries, technology equipment, rent and or lease of office space, on-site and travel expenses, and additional expenses as necessary. If the game is produced after the EDT has expired, this will result in over-budgeting expenses on a day-to-day basis. So looking at our concept stage, this is phase one of a game's development, and the game is conceptual at this point, and it may or may not even exist on paper at this particular stage. The first goal of the concept stage is to get all game ideas in writing, if not already. Our second goal is to propose the game to a publisher. So what do the proposal elements include? Proposals typically have the concept, the story, the objectives, the rules, and the EDT, as well as associated costs. The concept of any given proposal is critical to the success of a game. Game concepts usually include the genre, such as is it an RTS, an RPG, etc. It also includes the gameplay type, the perspective such as first person, second, maybe third. You also have the originality report to determine whether or not you have enough original content to avoid copyright infringement. You also have to have the target audience and the purpose of the game. The story determines to an extent whether the game will succeed or, as we call it in the industry, flop. Stories will include the character summaries and development, the environment, the time period, technologies within the game, and the main and subplots. The objectives and rules. To have a functioning game, the player must know what to look for, what to avoid, and how to do everything they need to within the game. The objectives typically include prizes and achievements, maybe missions and quests, and the rules will include boundaries, abilities, and also some morality. The development resources. Before a game ever gets off the ground, the publishers want to know if they can make the game succeed. Hence, you're proposing the game to the publisher. Part of a successful game is having a reasonable development time and cost. EDTs and costs usually include the phases, such as design, programming, testing, etc. And it also includes the completion dates. And you also have team designations. Once the game is accepted by the publisher, we move to the construction stage. This is phase two of a game's development. It requires developers to utilize game design documents to create basic gameplay. Advanced gameplay is also developed, but it is developed after the alpha iterations of the game, so after we get the game working. So our first goal is the game concept must work. Second, the proposed elements must be present within the game. Third, and final, the game must be fully operational with minimal bugs. So game designers establish core mechanics used in alpha iterations. The alpha iteration is a prototype used to test the core mechanics and the game concept. Basic gameplay is ironed out from alpha iteration to beta iteration, and beta testers find more bugs and refine the actual gameplay. Designing a game, we use the rules of 8. We first look at the gameplay modes. Do we have primary and secondary, controls, interactions, abilities, perspective? We also look at the character development, the design, the abilities, the tools, and the characteristics. We're looking at game world, such as maps, backgrounds, sounds, objects, and the environment. Then we look at core mechanics, so the adjustment of commands to strictly enforce the program code. Next, we look at mode elaboration. Does it add to gameplay modes to increase the immersion and aid in storytelling? We then look at story elaboration. We organize and expand our story, may add cutscenes, and other elements as needed. Next, we look at the level design. So we design to match the story. We also establish a programming framework. And finally, we test and debug. We have to find all bugs and code errors within the program. We have 4 classifications for bugs. Class A bugs are critical errors that will prohibit a game from releasing. Some examples will be code breaks down, the game is not playable. You have legal errors such as copyright infringement. Or you may have a difficulty issue where the game is too difficult or too easy. It is very important to note that Class A bugs cannot be released. Class B bugs are serious errors that may adversely impact the game's sales and/or reviews. These can include graphical errors, missing features, incomplete menu and/or options, and also another difficulty issue. Either the game is too difficult or too easy. Games can be released with Class B bugs. However, as stated, it will probably adversely impact the sale of the game. It may also impact the reviews that are given to the game, which then in turn will impact your sales. Class C bugs are minor errors that may be overlooked by the player, but they should be fixed before the release. These can include glitches, and we've seen them in a variety of games, high budget, low budget, etc. And the glitches usually are fixed before release. However, the ones that we see in the final product may not have had enough impact to be released because the game is being developed on a very tight schedule. And to prevent going over budget, the team just decided to leave the Class C bug. Class D bugs are suggested fixes and/or add-ons, and this will include adding features, maybe issues with the interface, or the technology used, such as the game console is released, but the game was developed for the previous console. Finally, we move to the tuning stage. The tuning stage is phase 3 of a game's development. It is the final game testing and refining stage. So at this point, we're looking at the functionality and the playability testing. Our first goal is to complete all fixes and adjustments. Our second and final goal is to release the final build. So when we're looking at testing, again, we're looking at 2 different things, the functionality, and we're specifically looking at performance, user interface, graphic rendering, the movements, interactions, and we have to find the remaining bugs. Then we look at the playability. We look at the story. Is it fulfilled with no major missing elements? The player tutorials and intuitiveness. The game flow. The game must match the concept. And we also have to make sure our target audience, when we first propose the game, is still the same target audience. We have to make sure the game appeals to this audience. At this point, check your understanding of the material. If you feel you have the material, excellent. However, if you need to review, please do so. And if you have any questions, please contact your instructor.